Hey Gratitude Seeker, Georgian here. Today I'm doing things a bit differently and bringing you a preview of another podcast I enjoy and think you will too. It's called The Happiness Lab and it's hosted by Yale professor Dr. Laurie Santos. On The Happiness Lab, Laurie explores all the ways we get our happiness wrong and what we can do to really feel better. She walks through the latest evidence-based strategies for improving your mental health, sharing practical advice on what will really bring more joy. In her latest New Year's season of the Happiness Lab, Laurie tackles how to listen to the inner voice of what we really need in the new year. And in the preview you're about to hear, she chats with Arrested Development and Veep actor Tony Hale about how we can stay grounded and present in the face of all our New Year's goals. As we start the new year, we tend to get focused on changing things up. We're on to the next diet plan or the next workout or the next step in our career development. We get so caught up in thinking about how great things will be in the future that it can be kind of impossible to hear that soft intuition telling us what we need right here in the present. Tony is no stranger to problems that come from spending too much time thinking ahead. He shares how this type of thinking plagued him early in his acting career and the concrete steps he's taken to find ways to stay present and listen to the inner voice of what he really needs right now. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you do, you can find more from the Happiness Lab wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Pushkin. When we enter a new year, many of us start to feel inspired about making big changes in our lives. That new date on the calendar can motivate us to improve our careers, our health, our habits, and our happiness. But when we start to think about how to go about making all these improvements, that's when things start to get really, really loud. We start to hear all these outside cultural voices shouting at us about what we should be doing, that number that we're really supposed to have on the scale, or the glossy gym we absolutely need to join, or the new productivity or dating app that all our friends are trying. These outside voices tell us there's one way to get fit or quit biting our nails or get that big promotion at work. It's a new year, they scream, and this is how things are going to have to change. These New Year voices are all very well intentioned, but they can sometimes get so loud that we can't even hear ourselves think. So in this New Year season of the Happiness Lab, I want us to try something different. Instead of listening to all these loud outside voices, we're going to do the harder work of looking inward. Over the next few episodes, we'll try to pay attention to the wise voice inside us, our inner compass, if you will, that often gets drowned out by all the outside noise. And we'll see that carefully listening to the quiet voice of what our bodies and our minds truly need may be the real path to happiness in 2023. Our minds are constantly telling us what to do to be happy. But what if our minds are wrong? What if our minds are lying to us, leading us away from what will really make us happy? The good news is that understanding the science of the mind can point us all back in the right direction. You're listening to The Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos. In the coming episodes, we're going to take a closer look at the perennial urges we have in the new year. To work out more, to eat healthier, to throw ourselves into our jobs, and to push ourselves to the limit. At first glance, all of these seem like reasonable personal goals. But we rarely take a moment to stop and think, could there be something else underlying all these desires? Why are we putting so much emphasis on how much we can bench press, how much protein we eat, or what our new job title is? And the place where I want to start this deeper exploration may seem slightly unorthodox. I want to start with a children's book.
Archibald's morning always started off the way it would end, in an egg.
My husband Mark and I have a ritual where he reads me bedtime stories at night. Sometimes we pick classic texts, but lots of nights these days, we just go for a children's book. And that was how I stumbled upon the book that inspired this entire episode. It's called Archibald's Next Big Thing.
Archibald woke up deeply frustrated that he hadn't figured out his next big thing.
The book tells the story of Archibald, a cartoon chicken who's desperately trying to find what he refers to as his next big thing.
I've got to find my next big thing.
Often missing out on exciting moments that were right there if he just took a moment to notice.
A dinosaur riding a roller coaster is pretty big, so what you're searching for must be huge. It is, said Archibald. I know it.
The book ends with Archibald realizing that big things are sometimes right in front of our noses. Or our beaks, as it were.
Of course, Archibald clucked loudly. How could I have missed it?
Archibald's Next Big Thing is a book for children, but many adults struggle with the same problem that this little chicken faced. Many of us spend a lot of energy looking forward to that next big thing when our new gym membership finally pays off, or how happy we'll be when we get that huge raise or promotion. We hear all these outside voices telling us how great it'll all be in the future, which makes it kind of impossible to hear the soft intuition that may be telling us that what we need to be happy is right here in the present. The author of Archibald's Next Big Thing knows this lesson all too well. He wrote the book for his daughter to help her learn what he'd gotten wrong so often before, that if you only concentrate on the next big thing, you'll miss the chance to be happy right now.
Hello.
Hey, Tony.
I'm just realizing now, I think I took your course.
Oh my gosh.
It's a course, right?
Yes, it's called The Science of Well-Being on Coursera. Now this makes so much sense why you talk so eloquently about happiness and mental health.
It's what you taught me.
In 2023, help yourself to delicious, convenient recipes that support your healthy lifestyle and taste good too. Eat well in the new year without sacrificing taste. Green Chef is the #1 meal kit for eating well with dinners that work for you, not the other way around. Green Chef is now owned by HelloFresh, and with a wider array of meal plans to choose from, there's something for everyone. I love switching between the brands, and now you, my dear gratitude seeker, can enjoy both brands at a discount. They're now offering 10-minute lunches. Each week's menu includes 2 convenient, low-prep, and nutritious lunch recipes ready in just 10 minutes. No cooking required. Perfect for when you're on the go or pressed for time at the office. Personally, I love the fact that they have such a wide variety of meals. Whether you prefer keto or gluten-free or vegetarian like me, they got you covered. Of course, I recommend the vegetarian plan even if you're not a vegetarian. Just try it out. Go to greenchef.com/gratitude60 and use code gratitude60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. Yes, you heard that right. Go to greenchef.com/gratitude60 and use code gratitude60 to get 60% off plus free shipping.
That author, whose voice you may recognize, is Tony Hale, the star of Veep, The Mysterious Benedict Society, and the actor who played Buster Bluth in Arrested Development. Like many of his characters, Tony admits to having been deeply affected by anxiety. And just like Archibald the chicken, Tony spent many years searching for his next big thing, including the next big role he thought would bring him the happiness he craved.
I mentioned this story a lot, and I really believe in it a lot. And I don't know, I'm a guy that needs a lot of reminders, so I don't mind talking about it a lot. But when I was living in New York, I was an actor in New York for like 7 years, and I was doing commercials, and I was actually doing pretty well in commercials. But there was something called pilot season, where there was like a 3-month period during the year where they would audition for TV pilots. And if you missed that window, you probably weren't going to get on a show. And really all I wanted in life was to get on a sitcom. That was kind of my goal, my end goal. Every year would go by and I would miss pilot season. I'd be like, what is happening? But I was always, anytime I would go through something, I was like, you know what, that day's coming. That day's coming. I'm going to get that sitcom. It's coming. It's coming. Finally, I booked Arrested Development, which was like the best cast, best scripts, incredible show. And when I booked it, I found myself that I wasn't as satisfied as I thought I was going to be. And it really scared me because you can't get better than Arrested Development. So I had no excuse. And I was like, wait a second, this is what I've dreamed about. And it didn't satisfy me. And when it was canceled in 2006, so it was kind of a time during that season of like, what's going on? What's happening? So when it got canceled, my daughter was born. And one thing that you have to do with a child is you can't be distracted. You can't, because my thing was when I realized through this Arrested Development experience, I just wasn't present for most of my life. And it wasn't just in New York. It was like whenever something was going on in my life, I would just check out. I would just really just kind of disassociate's a strong word, but I would just check out. I would look into the future. I would just kind of not be there. When my daughter was born, I realized like, I can't check out. I've got to keep this child alive. So I've got to be present. And it really woke me up to just the many times in my life, for most of my life, I wasn't present. And so then began this journey of just waking myself up to where I was. In my career, there's a lot of highs, like there's big highs. And I was kind of putting my satisfaction for most of my life in those big highs. And I wasn't giving a lot of power to the ordinary, a lot of power to the present, a lot of power to the everyday, and just didn't know how to find really joy and contentment in those moments. So I did something called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and really just kind of allowed myself, like he would always say, hey, why don't you just activate the five senses where you're at? What are you hearing, smelling, tasting, touching? And just like really grounding myself. Like he would say, you have to wake yourself up 100 times a day to where you are. And that's where this children's book came out that I did called Archibald's Next Big Thing, about this little chicken who gets his card in the mail that says your big thing is here. And he's like, where? And he goes on all these adventures. But every time he's on an adventure, he's like, I got to get to my next big thing. And this bee comes along and it's like, you got to just be, man. You got to just be. And he realizes that the card is right, that his big thing was right there. It wasn't somewhere else. And I had given that sitcom a lot of weight. And nothing can match the weight that I gave it. Now, keep in mind, I sound like I'm a professional at this. I'm not. This is something I struggle with. This is something it's very easy for me to check out. I think I talk about it a lot as a reminder, but it's just my default is to check out. And I have to daily find the power in the everyday and the ordinary, which is a challenge for me.
I mean, I think it's a challenge for everyone. I mean, I think you're in an industry where like looking ahead is really, I'm sure every single interview you do, somebody's like, what's the next big thing for Tony, right? But it's also just a feature of human nature. I mean, you talked about this idea of waiting for the next thing. Like this is a bias that psychologists call the arrival fallacy. It's kind of like the happily ever after fallacy. Like I'll get this next thing and I'll be good. But you're always looking to whatever the next thing is. Like
totally. And I never want to give the impression that dreaming is wrong, or I never want to give the impression that ambition is wrong, or like having those moments of a creative, like, oh, where's this going to go? I think that's great. My thing is that's all I was doing. I always tell people that the value you have before success is the same value you're going to have after success. And I'm in a business that tells you your value will be with what you get. And I say that because it's okay to ambition, but am I changing my value with what I think I'm going to get? Or am I giving myself the same value that I have now? And that's the trick.
But the cool thing about the Arrested Development story is that you had the realization, right? You kind of did realize you were chasing and that you weren't in the present moment. So what caused you to have that realization? Was there a moment when you're like, wait, this is never going away?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Honestly, I think it was the gift of getting my dream. I got it. And I mean, you've heard stories of people getting Oscars and then the next day they go into a depression. Mine was more in my anxiety has amped up because all these expectations were not matched and I just freaked out. Also, another component of that is the guilt when people would come up to me and say, oh my gosh, are you so excited? Are you so excited? And my insides did not match their expectation. And so then I walked away like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And that's when everything began to unfold and dissect. And I was like, wait, I got to go back and I got to realize being present is a big struggle for me. And the fact is, all these are very buzzwords right now, being present, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's a huge component for me is being present. Because I say that because there's a part of me that fights like, Tony, you're sounding cliche, but it's true. I just was not very present for most of my life.
This was a preview of the Happiness Lab with Dr. Laurie Santos. You can find other episodes of the Happiness Lab wherever you listen to your podcasts.